Hi, I'm Josh Bassages, Director and CEO of the Royal Ontario Museum. Welcome to this special online presentation of our signature lecture series, Rom Speaks. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional ancestral lands of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation since time immemorial to today. From fascinating viewpoints to thought-provoking insights, Rom Speaks presents the brightest minds and most compelling voices on ideas that matter across art, culture, and nature. Please enjoy this essential new addition to our Rom at Home digital programming. And I look forward to welcoming you back to the museum for more programs like this when it is safe to do so.
If we look at the world of Vikings, Vikings as in the Vikings and Vikings as in the TV series, the challenges and possibilities of communicating history on film are hard to underestimate. It's an awfully big challenge, but it offers fantastic possibilities. And personally, I think this drama series really fulfills that, and I hope that the documentaries have added something to it, so that the two together really form more than the sum of their parts. Catherine and Clive, there's something, but when we worked on the documentaries together, I actually never got around to asking either of you. Did you have any interest in the Vikings before you started the series, or did you come to it kind of fresh?
I grew up with parents who used to take me up to the depth and breadth of Britain every holiday. We never went abroad on skiing holidays or anything like that. We would be up north doing brass rubbing in castles and cathedrals, and I've been to Lindisfarne and places like that. So I had an opinion on the Vikings from what I'd learned at Jorvik Viking Centre and places like that in Britain. But I had no real idea of where they had spanned and what they'd achieved, because still, growing up in Britain, we tend to get told the stories about how they were raping, pillaging marauders from the north that just kind of killed and set fire to everything in their way, which is obviously one side of the story, but it's a lot of Christian propaganda thrown in there as well. But as soon as I got the part, I went down to the British Library and got as many books as I could and tried to read about Vikings. And then when I got to set, Michael Hurst gave me a load more books.
I didn't read books. I went straight to Google. I'm like, Vikings, Shield Maiden, what does that mean? But go on.
But no, I think it was just what I learned from it, though, is there's a two sides to every coin, and it was only when I started to do the research doing actually when this character became something to me, when Rollo became my character, that you get very protective and you start to realize that the truth lies in the middle somewhere. I mean, one of the main historians that was writing at the time, well, nearly 100 years after Rollo lived, was Dudo son Quentin. And he was commissioned by the current Duke of Normandy at the time. So he's obviously going to paint Rollo in a certain light that makes his boss, paint his boss in a favorable light. And then there's the other sides of Rollo the Walker and the sagas, which make him more into a thieving man that kind of was banished from his hometown. So yeah, the truth was in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, my experience was completely different. So for me, when I first read the scripts, I remember my agent sent me the scripts, and it was Vikings by Michael Hurst. And I was a huge fan of his, obviously from Tudors and Elizabeth, and knowing that he comes from a historical background, that he's an intellectual, and I knew that this was going to be really strong material. So of course, the first thing I did is I went online and I'm trying to figure out more about Vikings, because being born and raised in Toronto, and I'm so happy to be home, by the way. I used to come here as a kid in field trips, so it's nice to be back at the ROM. So, but growing up, you kind of have this idea of Vikings, and it's the stereotype that they had these horns coming out of helmets, that they were these barbaric, uncivilized people. And reading the scripts, I just knew that this was going to be a very different take on it. And of course, when I read at the end of 2 episodes, I remember coming across Lagertha, and I'm like, wow, this is a mother and a shield maiden. I'm like, what is a shield maiden? I remember asking myself, and I went online, and I'm like, shield maiden on Google. Nothing came out. Now, of course, if you go online, there's definitely pages on it.
Pictures of you.
But I remember I found a small little poem of a saga of something that came of a shield maiden. There was one picture I think I still have saved. But it was something that I brought up when I ended up, part of my auditioning process was a Skype call with Michael Hurst. And I remember speaking with him. And really, I got into the psyche of what it would take to be a shield maiden at that time period, and what it would take for a woman to be in a position where not only does she have to raise children and farm, but also fight and provide for her family, and to be able to fight alongside our men and have a strong voice. And I was just really pleasantly surprised that Michael was very open to writing women with such strength. Giving them a lot of not only courage, but giving them a lot of power, and you see that through the evolution of 6 years with Lagartha. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Sheila, you've produced other historical dramas in the past, the Tudors and the Borgias, and also period horror pieces like Penny Dreadful.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, do you think, that makes them so popular?
Escapism, I think. I have a feeling that, it's just my thought, but I think sometimes the more the current world is with us, the more we enjoy escaping to another time, another place. And I think there's a very strong draw in historical drama, because unlike escaping into fantasy, it's very rooted in where we came from as a species. And so looking at this kind of story with real people who had families and issues and conflicting religious beliefs, and a lot of the things we're still dealing with in our modern world. I think it allows you to escape from the now. And a lot of people I love a costume drama. Like, give me a costume drama anytime. It's pure escapism. And I also think that I think people enjoy understanding ourselves through a different time and a different lens, seeing the human race in a different light. What do you guys think?
And how we probably haven't changed since the
How we
9th
haven't
century.
changed necessarily all that
We're
much.
still driven by the same things, and we still love our children. And you kind of feel that with Vikings, it kind of breaks the mold of most historical dramas. I was just speaking about this downstairs with E.T. Canada, and I haven't spoken about it for a while. And I kind of feel that when I remember Gustav and myself, when we were filming the very first episode, we sat in the back of a minibus. And we loved the script, but he's from Scandinavia, and he's a real Viking, and he was like, this is the first time my people, and I was just looking at a script and going, this is incredible, and I was geeking out, and I'm a bit of a history nerd, and we were like, but is anyone ever going to watch it? We love it, but, and to be fair, at that time, we didn't think anyone would. But I think how it's transcended most period dramas is when you think of a period drama, an historical drama, you think of Downton Abbey or Pride and Prejudice and a costume drama. But yet we are a costume drama, we are a historical drama. But because of the Vikings and the subject material, and they deal with gods and monsters and the pagan belief system, it's very otherworldly and almost fantastical, which puts it in the realms of things like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, but it's not, it's a history show. But then you grab those people in as well, and you can't pigeonhole this show. It kind of ticks every single box that people want from something like that, and escapism obviously is a massive part of it.
And to add to that, and just something that we saw today, is the amount of work that goes into the details of the costumes and the hair and the makeup. Everything, if you ever come to the set of Vikings and you get a chance to meet with the heads of department and the crew members, you would realize how much work and research goes into the details of our characters and our sets and our sacrifices and our battle sequences. And that is something that even though as actors you may get the glorified attention, there's no way we could do this without all of the hard work, the research, the amount of details that goes in to be able to tell this story without the extensive information. And it's a real collaborative effort for sure.
I remember Joan Bergen was talking about, she did the costumes for the Tudors as well as Vikings, and she was saying that we used to win Emmys every year for the Tudors, and it made her laugh because she said most of these beautiful silks and the dresses, they're all hired. They obviously fit them, and there's a lot of work goes into fitting to an actress or an actor. But she said all those beautiful costumes, there's not much work that goes into those. Whereas in Vikings, the dirty, horrible costumes, like Ragnar's leather costume, is being salt beaten for days and days and days, and they age it until it looks like it's been worn on a longship for months. And yet you don't get the credit. People watch that and go, oh, that costume's not pretty. And there's far more craftsmanship and workmanship that goes into a costume like that.
Yeah, but then also with Lagertha evolving from a farmer to a shield maiden to a queen. I remember the big part of the conversation is how do I evolve her, with talking with Joan and the costume designer. And she brought up a really interesting point, and she introduced the color blue. And it was a royal color that only the aristocrat, only of women or of the queens used to wear them, because it was such a hard color to produce in clothing. And you will see, as you see Lagertha progress, you will see her just get introduced to that color when she becomes a queen. And just little details like that, and getting a chance to go into the fittings with the costume designer and talking about this really helps as actors to fill in all those holes creatively and to be able to really step into a different pair of shoes.
It's a spectacular show, obviously, and this attention to detail with all the costumes and the sets and so on. But it's also very human. All the characters are recognizable people. At the same time as the Viking Age and the Vikings were also different to us in many ways. Their view of the world was very different. How do you go about finding the person inside the Viking? I mean, Catherine, you've just talked about finding Lagertha's character. How do you sort of develop that over season after season?
Well, for me, it's a transformation process. When I get on set, well, first of all, sometimes at 3:15 in the morning, because we're shooting daylight dependent, so we have to shoot out. So we sometimes get picked up extremely early in the morning. But going through hair and makeup and getting into Lagertha braids, that's usually an hour process. And, well, there's not much makeup. It's usually dirt and more blood. But I will tell you this, I definitely started enjoying it. It became a bit of a ritual for me, and getting my shield maiden costume and getting help, getting tied into it and strapped into it, because you need the help, of course, because with all those laces. But I started to really, I found myself daily having a ritual, becoming Lagertha on a daily basis, and that's something that was new for me. It's something I couldn't really say, this is what I'm going to do to become Lagertha. It was just something that became a daily habit, really, for me.
The first week Catherine was on set, we were talking about this the other day. She came on with these fabulous eyebrows. And we did all our camera tests and stuff, and then we said, but the eyebrows.
Yeah, you didn't like them.
We had to bleach them out because they were so perfect and modern, right? And Lagertha would have had whatever she was born with and would have been very pale. So that was part of you becoming Lagertha, is losing your look in week one.
I remember when the first time I auditioned, I actually went to the Halloween store and I got a Vikings costume, thinking, I'm like, yeah, I'll be a Viking, and I can't believe I can't even imagine what it looked like.
Didn't you do a second audition, though, with no makeup on?
I did, yes. You thought it was too, yes.
Yeah.
You told me we needed to show Lagertha be more weathered, and I remember putting black under my eyes. I'm like, how do I get uglier? But yes, so. Yeah. For you, Clive?
For me, all I knew about Rollo was what he accomplished at the later end of his life, the Duke of Normandy and everything that happened there. I mean, the great-great-grandfather of William the Conqueror. There's so much written about him there. But that wasn't the Rollo that I was presented with by Michael Hurst in the very first episode. He was a very base man, very questionable morals. But that's what freed me up, because I always like to think with anybody, the flip side of the coin, if someone appears to be some way, what's the sacrifice? What's really going underneath it? And Michael gave me the ability to really delve deep in myself and try not to judge this character, just ask some really dark questions about myself and think about how someone falls and continues to get things wrong and then rises up, with Rollo somewhat from the ashes and reinvent himself completely. And the only way I can really describe it is when I sat down with Michael, he kind of gave me permission to say, look, this is a beautiful vase, and this is the Duke of Normandy, and this, and he's a brilliant ruler. People respect him. Now we're just going to smash it on the floor into 1,000 pieces, and then it's your job over season after season to slowly glue him back together again until he becomes this. And that I've never had a character like that, where I feel like every time I come back for a new season, our incredible writer has just almost written another character, and you have to somehow fuse those characters together and just keep building and building. It's been a joy.
Can I ask, how did you feel when you went to the tomb in Rouen?
I cried, actually, and it's not on camera, because it wouldn't have meant anything to me at the beginning so much, because I actually went to see Rollo's statue when I was on a French exchange trip when I was about 11 years old, and I had no idea I was going to be playing a Viking or being an actor. But I did a lot of research, as I always try and do as much research as I can, because I like to just be prepared for anything. But it was all just for the character that I was playing in season 1. So to actually walk in his footsteps until season 4, I think, when I did it, then it felt special. It felt like I was actually, because I'm playing another character right now. It's set in the 70s. It's another historical character, and it only be 30 years ago. But any character I play that's a real person, I feel like I have a responsibility to get them right to my best ability. And I'm actually coining, because he said it better than me, it was Torbjorn Haar, who played Jarl Borg. But it's the same, he just put it into words, is that in the theater when you're playing someone, I always like to imagine that they're right at the back of the stalls in the darkness judging me every night. And on camera, I kind of like to feel that Rollo's there behind the camera, or just somehow just putting that pressure on you to go, that's not me, try harder, look deeper, that's interesting, I want more interesting, or whatever it is. And that's where I kind of felt. I felt like I was looking at this guy, and he was just going, well, I don't know what he was thinking, but I just felt he was right there in front of me, and it all became real. This is a real person, and I was allowed to step over a barrier, as we both were, where the general public aren't allowed usually, because we were making a documentary, and this is a man that deserves his place in that.
I can't believe we didn't use the crying. Why didn't we use the crying?
Yeah, no, I had a similar experience too. The first few years of shooting Vikings, every journalist, when we were promoting the episodes, kept saying, well, shield maidens don't really exist, do they? And I remember coming to Stockholm with Neil, and when I got a chance, if you haven't seen the episode, which got nominated for the Canadian Screen Award today, but I had the privilege of going to Stockholm and be part of the discovery of holding bones, which for 100 years, they thought that this particular warrior was buried in such a fashion that was at the highest fashion of burial, with 2 horse heads, with swords and shields, and so everybody assumed, of course, it was a male. And I remember holding the pelvic bone, and I remember thinking, what if it's Lagertha? And then a year and a half later, the article came out, which I'm sure you guys read, that yes, it confirmed that there were female soldiers or warriors, that there were shieldmen, that they actually existed. And I had that same experience because I had such pushback for so many years that women could actually fight, But
even in Vikings, I remember everyone gave Catherine a hard time. Because I remember in season 1, the only research we really had on shield maidens was, the wives would go with their husbands to battle. They would fight, they would be strong, but they're called shield maidens because if a man's shield smashed in the shield wall, they'd need it replaced, and the woman would come and replace the shield. And bullshit. But this is what she had to deal with. And at the beginning, it was Elitza came in right at the end. It was pretty much just Jesselyn and Catherine and a bunch of blokes. So you had so much kickback.
But I'm just excited that we actually proved them wrong and that shieldmans actually existed.
I have to say, though, that not all of my archaeological colleagues agree. Just before coming here, I had an email from one of them saying they're obviously presents from her husband, and it's like face palm. So those prejudices are still there. It's desperate. But Catherine, Lagertha has become an iconic character. I mean, you've got a massive fan base all over the world. And also the character's become something of a role model for a lot of people. What is it about her that strikes such a chord in people, do you think?
What is it about Lagertha? What isn't it about Lagertha? Like, she's such a strong woman, but also vulnerable, and a mother, and a loving, compassionate soul, that she's not only a shield maiden, that she's also a caretaker, and she's not shy to be feminine as well. And that's something I fought for. I remember, well, why can't she let her hair down and be sexy too? And why does she doesn't have to be this strong person all the time. It's more interesting in reality. I grew up in self-defense and martial arts. I started training Taekwondo at the age of 7, and I got my first black belt at 12 years old, and started my own martial arts school at 16. And I grew up in a dojo with mostly boys and men. So for me, I kind of grew up in that field that I constantly had to fight for what I believed in every day. So I understood her strong will, I understood her indomitable spirit, I understood her perseverance, because that is what I really, so when I had that initial call with Michael Hurst, I'm like, well, I get her. I actually get her, and she's, on one hand, a woman that we all look up to in the sagas, but she's also an everyday woman, and that every single woman out there can relate to her. And there's a lot of warrior women that are working moms, that are juggling 2 jobs, that are running corporations and companies and coming home and trying to put food on the table for their families. And I think there's a lot of strength in that, and them themselves are warriors as well.
It's kind of like a proverbial high five there.
Thank you. Need some water.
You just sort of broaden it out a bit. Sheila, do you, with so much experience in the field of historical dramas, do you think there are any particular challenges in bringing the past to life rather than something set in the present day?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges, which mostly come down to financial issues. A series of this size, which in terms of its ambition is really almost equivalent to Game of Thrones. We don't have as many foreign locations as they have. They have stories operating in many different places, but it's our battles are, in my opinion, sometimes better than Game of Thrones. They stole a few things from us last year. And we have friends who work on Game of Thrones too, but everybody borrows from everybody. But they're massively expensive to produce. And that's for any number of reasons. It depends on Penny Dreadful, for example, was not as expensive as Vikings. Because for Penny Dreadful, which is set in Victorian London, you can still find locations. We shot that in Ireland as well. So there are streets in Dublin that still read pretty much perfectly as Victorian London. The costumes are more accessible. There are still some carriages and so on from that time. When you get into a series like Vikings, you're starting from absolute zero. Every piece of costuming has to be built. Every vehicle in which they travel, the boats, the carts, all the props, all the bowls, all the cups, all the horns, everything has to be built from scratch. So it's a massive undertaking. I mean, on Vikings, there's somebody in the costume department who does nothing but work leathers, year in and year out, building all the vests and the bracelets. And you have a crew that is enormously larger than the crew on a contemporary drama. So you start with that. And locations are very challenging. It's amazing that we pull Vikings off in Ireland. I mean, we did make a trip to Iceland, which was spectacular, but with the help of visual effects, we managed to pull it off. But, you know, you're out in the middle of the weather and muddy fields, and these guys always smell great, though, you know? I remember going to set once and hugging Clive in the middle of the Hill of the Ash battle, and he looked like hell, and he smelled great. But, you know, it's tough work for everybody. And in the case of a show like this, where you are living out in the elements and not living in a castle in Tudor times, that gets expensive too. You need a lot of support systems to take care of people, and the days get long, and people get dirty and tired and
wet.
And wet.
The crew are amazing, though, aren't they?
And the crew is amazing.
Yeah,
They've been working together since Tudors as well, so it's like almost like 10 years before we even came along that they'd been working on certain shows, and they're the closest thing you can get to that thing when people say they're a family, is rather than the actors who go, we're a family. The crew really are. And you have to step into their family, and they're Irish as well, so it's like that double kind of Irish. There's a new meaning to family. You know, if you're going up the top of a mountain in the morning at 4:30 in the morning or something, and there's boxes of camera equipment, it's like, pick it up, Clive, get up there. You know, you can't stop being a prissy actor that's not coming out of his trailer or anything.
Yeah.
You just got to muck in, and that's how we all survive up there.
Yeah, there's no divas allowed on set.
Yeah.
I just recently I got the privilege to get a chance to direct, and I can add to what Sheila just said is the amount of hard work that goes into all of the crew members and the costumes. Like, we had camera department lugging up cranes up on top of a mountain with the wind and the rain and in wetsuits and just giving their all just to make a shot so we have the sunrise in the morning. It's pretty remarkable.
We've built roads.
Yeah.
Into barren land in Ireland, and it's an epic undertaking. It costs a lot of money, and it is very hard to make sure you're getting the locations right.
I talked a little bit about accuracy earlier and the way academics obsess about it and stuff. Where do you draw the line between recreation and accuracy?
Oh, that's a question for Michael.
Well, I will say Michael gives us a lot of creative freedom in the sense where he's a very collaborative creator and somewhat of a showrunner in the sense where we're in this together. So I say somewhat of a showrunner because, Sheila, you take such a big part of that and so creative and hands-on in the post-production that it's amazing what you do, especially what I've been seeing the last week. I've been editing, and I've just incredible the amount of hard work that goes behind the scenes. But he's also very involved in talking your character out and trying to decide where your character is going to go and how you're feeling in life and what you want to do as a person and bringing your work into your character. He, over a glass of wine, we can talk, and then, you might be able to, we have a very friendly relationship with all our cast and crew that a lot of it gets brought into our work. This is something that's been, after 6 years, we bring a lot of our personal selves into our roles, and I think that is what you see on screen. It's not just TV making. For me, it's a part of reality.
I think he'd say as well, if he was here, is that also what the difference between history and drama is that you have to kind of not cut corners is the wrong word, but it's like, for instance, Rollo and Ragnar weren't brothers. Yeah. And he knows that. He's not done his research. But they lived nearly 100 years apart, and they're two incredible Viking figures in the Viking age. So no one really wants to watch a drama series where you watch 5 episodes and then you kill that guy and go 100 years into the future and have another character you're meant to care about. But what better dramatic effect than to make them brothers so you can live out their two tales simultaneously? But also, I wanted to say briefly as well that what our very first director did, Johan Renck, who did the first 3 episodes, and Michael together, kind of gave all of us permission to know that we were making something different. And Take 5 and History, because History had never really made a scripted series before, that kind of went, just don't let it fail. And it gave us permission just to go, let's do something completely different, outside of the box. And if we like it, like I said earlier, me and Gustav in the back, if you like it, there's a good chance that a lot of other people in the world might like it too. So just stick to the integrity of what you're doing. And we had one director come in season 1, and I'm not going to name him because he was a great director, but it was his first episode of Vikings, after this amazing director, Johan Renck. And And he kind of went, we came in to do a Viking beheading, and he'd set up a chopping board, a chopping block on the thing, and he said, like, and we all, literally all of us that were there that day went, what's that? And he went, well, he puts his head on the block and then we chop it up. And I went, why? Because you saw Mary Queen of Scots? Because he's like, that's what they do. It's like, Vikings all go, ah! Why? Because you watch Braveheart? And he's going, why are you coming to me like this on the day? It's because we all read a book. That's the least you can do. But it's Michael and Johanna gave us permission to do that, to go, no, we're not just going to do what everyone else is doing. We're going to do what the Vikings did, because they have never been portrayed on screen before. And I'm so glad that he gave us permission to do that.
Well, he gave you permission to be Vikings, didn't he?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the beard story?
The beard story.
Remember at the beginning of
beard
Beards?
story?
Everybody was going,
What's a beard story?
oh, in the first block of the show, Johan got everybody growing beards. So
Yeah.
the whole crew were commanded to grow. Johan had a beard. So everybody had to grow beards during the whole first 3 episodes of the show. And he did. He gave everybody permission to be Vikings.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I put my hair extension, I had hair to about here, and then they gave me these luscious hair extensions, and I looked like something like, the Cowardly Lion or something in Wizard of Oz. I looked incredible. I had the best hair I've ever, I looked like Fabio or something like that, I don't know. But then Johan walked in and just went, no. Because he's Swedish. He was like, no, I want real hair. And he ripped half of them out. So it was like mangy, and he was like, this guy lives on a boat. It's going to be salt stained. It's all going to be, it's going to be falling out. And he just wanted it to be real and to not just do a
I remember
period
that.
drama.
I had the similar experience with Lagertha. These aren't my nails, by the way. But with Lagertha's fingernails in the first season, like, it was to a point where he wanted, and which I now have 6 years later have made it a point where to put dirt makeup between the fingernails. You may not ever see it, but as actors, when you look at your hands and you see dirt everywhere, you just get more grounded. You get more real. You're like, hey, I don't need to be like all dolled up. It's the more grounded, the better. And just that little detail is what I think is why we're here 6 years later.
And you guys, over time, have become the keepers of that reality, because, as you say, you correct, because, directors come and go from a television series, and the first time they arrive, they're trying to orient themselves, and the cast have been exceptional at keeping new people grounded in the reality of the culture.
Set the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm getting signals here that our time has elapsed, so that's a good note to end on. I'd just like to say that personally, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to work with you all, and thank you very much for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for coming.